Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to another one of our hot-powered, inspiring interviews. And again, we have an amazing guest, a lady that somewhere lives between the US and Costa Rica, and she's doing amazing things in the several businesses she has built. Well, who is she? Her name is Caroline Ceniza-Levine, and she's the founder of the Dream Career Club. She's a long-term recruiter, and as a long-term recruiter, she has coached executives from prestigious companies like Amazon, Goldman Sachs, Google, McKinsey, Tesla, and many other leading firms on how to make a great living doing the work they love. And who wouldn't want to make money with doing the work you love? And if that is not you, you want to pay special attention today to our interview and connect with Caroline afterwards. But in any case, you're also going to pick up again precious hints and tips on how to bring your speaking to a different level. So Caroline is also a senior contributor to Forbes Leadership and author of Jump Ship, 10 Steps to Starting a New Career. She has been a repeat guest on CBS, CNN, CNBC, and Fox Business. She's also a classically trained pianist at Juilliard, and she stays active in the arts, writing and producing with FBC Films. Well, as I said earlier, she lives somewhere between Florida, New York, and Costa Rica, and I'm really happy to have you today, and I feel honored to have you today with us, Caroline. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Great. So why don't we jump right in? We always ask every one of our guests a question like, what are 3 of your secret sauce ingredients and 3 things you do right now in your business to, again, bring it to a different level based on keeping in mind the current circumstances?
Yeah, 100%. So one of the things that I ask myself is my own compass, and that I also ask my clients right when we get going, and then also periodically as we're working together to make changes is, if you won the lottery today, would you continue doing what you're doing today? And it really shines a spotlight for myself. I look at it in a number of different ways. I look at it with my business, certainly. Who are the clients that I would keep? What are the projects that I would keep doing? Is there something that I would do more of? Is there something that I would drop altogether? So that's what I mean by shining that lens. Of course, you could also look at that personally. You could look at your relationships. You could look at your diet and exercise plan and say, would I do something differently? And I know that when I'm dealing with my clients who are typically experienced professionals and executives who've reached a certain level in their career, a lot of times that opens up a space for having pretty deep conversation around like, what are my priorities? What is left to get done? What's the legacy that I want to leave? So it's a simple question on the face of it, but it really can uncover just a lot more investigation, things that we can do together.
Great. Okay. And we asked you for 3 things. So what are the other 2 things you do to bring your business to the next level right now?
Yeah. So, I start there because it uncovers, things that maybe you'd want to work on. So, one example is if you find that there is something that you want to change, many times I'll say, okay, so let's do an experiment here. What are 5 ways that you might do that? So one of the things that I uncovered for myself was that I wanted to really have more time to travel and follow some personal interests, that I realized about myself that I'm not all work, that I work to live and not the other way around. There are some people who, can clock in 60, 70, 80 hours and they're really, really happy doing that. That's not me. And so I looked at, okay, what are 5 ways that I could do that? I could immediately drop to part-time. I could start doing some of the things that I say that I want to do. So FBC Films grew out of, I'm interested in movies. I love to watch movies. Let me write something. Let me fund something so that I can get involved in somebody else's movie. So, I'm trying to pick, and I tell people, pick at least 5 things. So in my case, it was, do I start working less? Do I fund the movie? Do I write a movie? I also uncovered that I'm interested in real estate and was like, how do I get involved with that? So it became, let me start looking at properties. I don't have to run out and buy something, right? So the part of the experimentation is, you don't have to quit your job if you're working. You don't have to do something that's disruptive, but it's how can you start moving in that direction in a way that's going to give you more information without, having to, again, like disrupt your whole life. So I still continued doing what I was doing. I did start writing a little bit more creatively, because up until that time, I was only writing, blogs and articles and pieces for my work. Everything was about, one specific thing. So I had an idea and I just started writing it down. A friend of mine who had gone to theater school, who was a friend of mine in recruiting circles, believe it or not, but we also shared this love of film. He had some projects. So I ended up, producing one of his projects. And in that way, that was the first time I had worked on a short film. So I was moving in that direction. Again, didn't have to quit everything that I was doing, but moving in that direction. On the real estate, I started to discover all of these different sites. And so, I pursued two options there too. I was looking domestically. And so I was looking at, okay, what are the areas that I know? At the time I was living in New York, and I started just really pursuing all of the listings in New York, because that's where I was. But at the same time, I discovered some resources around real estate internationally. And so that was, something that I was like a someday thing, but I thought, well, what if I did that now? And I just started reading about it. So again, I didn't pack my bags, just leave, right? But I started reading about it. And, interestingly enough, within 3 years of just reading about things, I started to home in on a location. And then we took a trip to Costa Rica, and we took a couple of trips. This is pre-pandemic, and ended up buying a place there. So what starts as an experiment, reading, talking to people, things that, again, you don't have to make a move, start to snowball. And that's what I tell people. Start small and then just kind of pursue. Because I've had some people where they do the experiment part. They'll start reading about something. They'll start talking to people. Maybe they'll take a class, so you start getting more and more active. And sometimes you get to a stage where it's like, no, I thought that I was interested in this, and I really, really don't like that, and like, because you have these misconceptions, honestly, about what the activities are, or maybe what the community is like. And it turns out that it's not something for you, but just knowing that too is so helpful.
Great, I love it. And the way you're describing it, Caroline, it sounds so easy and joyful, and that's exactly what it should be, right? But I get a question often that if a lot of people, and if you are anything like me a little bit, you probably have like a gazillion new ideas every single day, right? I mean, that's who we are as entrepreneurs, right? So we constantly have new ideas of what we could be doing, or how we could expanding our business, or what additional bits and pieces we could add to serve people in a greater way. From all these ideas you are having, like the one related to real estate, and making that an important part of your, of who you are and your business. How do you decide? What are your criteria to decide which of these impulses and ideas to take action on, and which ones to drop?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think that there's any one way to decide, in the sense of, hey, do this one thing and you'll know for sure. There are several things. So sometimes I'll have a client who will run the numbers, for example. So that's actually probably the simplest way to get started. I will often tell people that there is some metric that we can find that's the right metric, and we'll run the numbers on it. So you asked about real estate. So part of it is that is a numbers game, right? When I got started, I looked at properties where if I bought this property and I made a huge mistake, right? So it's this balance between conservative and aggressive, right? So aggressive is, okay, I've done all the reading that I can do. At some point, you do have to make a move. I call it, you do have to run away and join the circus, right? You do have to do like the something. And so in my case, I was interested in the rental investment aspect of it. So at some point you have to buy a property. That's the aggressive part. But the conservative part is to say, okay, am I going to spend all my money to do that? Am I going to spend all of my savings? Am I going to spend all of my savings and borrow money to do that? Like, what is my comfort level? What are my other obligations? That's a math problem, right? So I'm looking at specific numbers. So someone who might be thinking about changing their job, I'm going to ask them to write out a budget for me, because, you know, are you like changing your job in a vacuum? Are you married with children, with, you know, existing financial obligations? And so, like, what does that look like? I had a client, for example, who came from banking and was interested in doing something else. And she had some ideas for industries. And if you know anything about the banking industry, it's one of the highest paying industries. And the role that she was at was a pretty significant role. So we had to have a serious conversation about running the numbers, because she was 20 years into her career. She had a life at that point. So you run the numbers, right? That's one way of deciding. But let's say that the numbers work out, right? Let's say that, and in this particular case, continuing with that client, she actually could swing it. She wasn't spending all her money. She wasn't one of these people that had built herself, you know, a 7-figure lifestyle. So the numbers were, she still couldn't honestly give herself the permission, right? So then it's something that's more emotional. And in that particular case, sometimes I'll say something as simple as, okay, we're going to flip a coin on this one. And we're going to say, heads, you go for it, tails, you don't. And throw the coin really high. And before you look at what it says, like, ask yourself, what do you wish it said? Right? Like, what do you like? Would you be disappointed if it turned heads and like it said yes and you're going for it? So sometimes it's as simple as like what's that feeling? Right? If you've already done the practical stuff, what is that feeling? And then, you know, something that's kind of in between that is I tell people to write what I call dueling stories. So follow that includes. So I write myself a story. I buy this property. This is what happens in the best case, you know, like this is what my life looks like as that's unfolding. This is what everything else looks like. I do something else. You know, again, I'm looking at these other options, right? I end up not doing that. I don't buy that property. I make another movie, or I invest the money in hiring someone for my business. Or in this financial person's case, I said, okay, you take that, you make that change, which was into, she thought it was going to be nonprofit. She actually went into education. So she went into the public sector. But I said, you know, write that story that you did that. Write the other story that you stayed in banking, but you took a board seat somewhere. Write the story, you know, like write the different stories of what that looks like and just sit in that. Don't do anything. Just write the story as vivid color as you can. Sleep on it. See how you feel the next day. You know, so it's not as immediate as flipping a coin, but it really gets to some of the issues. And it's also, you know, not as numbers oriented as like really doing the math. Can I afford it? What's my lifestyle going to look like? But it does have that same kind of, practically speaking, what does this look like? Like, right. What's my day going to look like when I wake up?
Right, I love it. And, you know, these are some great questions to ask to really make a decision. Do I move forward with that idea or impulse or not, right? I'd like to also know from you, Caroline. I know that you've been many years in a corporate career and you built your business as a career, you know, coach and counselor, right? And, you know, eventually also you start to embark on the property, you know, on the real estate work. And eventually you hit the 7-figure mark, like a lot of people want to do in the business, right? So what are the critical steps? Because I know that also, you know, before we had this interview, you mentioned something around we as entrepreneurs have choices on how we want to reach the 7-figure mark, right? So there's a lot of people here with us right now that like to bring their business to that level and reach the magical 7 figures eventually, right? So what was your journey? You know, how did you eventually get to that magical 7 figures? And what are the choices entrepreneurs have to get there?
Yeah, so I can just speak for myself, and I can, you know, I think my story is a cautionary tale, because I was the type of person who I read all of the books and the business magazines. So I was reading Inc. magazine and Entrepreneur, and I was looking at these business owners. And at least in the US, I can't speak for Germany, but in the US, there's very much this rugged individualism, go big or go home. That story, right, of the lone wolf who becomes successful and builds this big company. And so for a long time, I would say easily the first 5, I would say the first 10 years of my business, I was experimenting with the real estate, with the production company and other things, after year 5. But I was still very much focused on, if I'm going to build a 7-figure business, it's going to be in my consulting business. I thought of consulting as my business, and real estate and the films and all of that other stuff was stuff that I did for my personal passions. Because remember, go big or go home, right? That was the marker. And I realized that actually didn't work for me. Like, I was not happy when I was doing all of the things that I felt like I needed to do to make my consulting business a 7-figure business. So I have, a 7-figure net worth at this point, but it's not from that business. It's from multiple businesses. And it sounds obvious. It's so obvious to me right now that I was meant to do a lot of different things. And it's, at the end of the day, it's the end result that matters. Is like, are you enjoying what you're doing? And are you meeting your obligations? And are you fulfilling, the financial goals that you have, the relationship goals you have, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you do that? There's so much focus on, hyper focus on one thing. And I just realized for myself, it was doing multiple things. So I'm not going to tell people to run out and start 3 businesses, right? Like, that's not the action necessarily, but it's certainly to ask yourself, right? Are you on the path that's going to make you happy? And then ultimately, so that you can stick to it and to reach those other goals, the financial goals, for example, you're going to need to stick to it in order to do it. And so I just realized that there was no way that I was going to do what everybody else did with their consulting business or with their, traditional business. I needed to do what worked for me. And then once I embraced that, it was great after that. And I started, making the kind of money that I wanted to make. I think it was such a relief, and I fell into my personality and into like how I like to work. And then just everything worked out. So you don't have to follow conventional wisdom all the time.
Absolutely. And again, as you say, there's a lot of preconceptions out there of how it needs to be done and how it should be done, right? And really finding a way, yes, follow guidance and look at what other successful people are doing, and then find our own way. That's the key, right? So I know that, Caroline, you and I, we are both women of action, right? So when we set our mind to something, we set a goal, we do whatever it takes, right? And repeated action becomes a habit. And I always like to know, like, what is one of your success habits? What are you doing pretty regularly that, contributes to your outstanding success?
Yeah, so I have a pretty specific morning routine. I manage my days very differently. I will have different schedules every day because I'm just juggling different things. But something that I do most mornings, so again, I'm not crazy about it, but I do it, I would say, like 5 out of 7 days a week, is I will do a short meditation. So anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes. I think of that as training for the brain. It's just my time to just go inward and either not think about something, or maybe I'll do visualizations or affirmations, but it's mental time. So I do that. And then I will spend the next half hour journaling. So it's almost like you got to clear your head. And then I get great ideas on journaling. Sometimes I will do long form. So I'll literally set a timer and just start writing sentences, whole sentences, stream of consciousness. Sometimes I'll do lists. I'm a big list person, and I'll just something will come to me and I'll literally write 10 restaurants that I want on my list. And then I'll start thinking about that. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be about business. A lot of times I'm journaling about just things that occur to me. A lot of it's around self-care and things that I'm interested in. That's me time. So that hour that I'm spending, half of the journaling and half of the meditation, that is like a really good time for me.
Yeah, I love it. It's as you say, brain training at the same time is opening up creativity, right? And that's actually when the ideas come, right? Love it. Great. So I know that you spoke about that, how important it is for you to, run your business in a heart-centered way. I mean, as you know, our business is called Heart-Powered Business. What does it mean for you to run a heart-powered business?
Yeah, it goes back to that initial question, right? So if you were to win the lottery and you didn't have to do anything, would you still do it? That's, for me, that is the ultimate heart question, because you're not in your head at that point, right? Because everything else is taken care of. That's the point of the question. And so for me, it was the pursuing multiple businesses, right? Like letting go of that comparative, I'm going to look at what everybody else is doing on the Inc. 5000 and just really saying, you know what, I'm going to build 3 other businesses that just support me in different ways. And then all of a sudden, like, come together, run the numbers, and it's, oh, I'm where I had wanted to be with just one business, but this way I'm honoring what I love to do. So
great. Okay, good. And we always love to actually turn our inspiring conversation into a little gentle nudge for everyone else that is here with us. And by the way, thank you for being on with us on such a regular basis and allowing us to inspire you with our amazing guests. And again, Caroline, we ask our guests every time, like, what is out of our conversation? What is one thing everyone that is here with us today can do today to bring everything to the next level? And I have the sense that you probably want to play with a lottery question idea, right? So what can they do today to get going on that?
Yeah, well, I think if this conversation sparks something for you that says, hey, I too also need to do something differently. I talked about that experimentation, right? And the 5 options. So pick one area of your life that you want to change. Maybe it's your business is not exactly firing the way it is. And think about 5 options. So 5, don't stop at 3. Don't even stop at 4. Like, really push yourself to say 5. One of them can be, I'm going to just not do it altogether, right? One of it can be, I'm going to continue to do everything that I'm doing, but I'm going to double down. I'm going to, make twice as many sales calls. I'm going to work, 10% more hours, or, whatever it is, like however you're defining doing more, right? And then the other 3 options are changes that you would make in your business, offering something new, changing your pricing, going after a different customer, right? Going after the same customers, but offering, something different, either different service, different pricing, different way of working together. And so, those are 5, kind of general things, but you can pick something else. I mean, I ended up just picking different businesses altogether, right? So, that's something to do next.
Great. And you and I could keep talking together forever, right? It would be always, bringing more golden nuggets out. But, we want to round it off. But I know there's a lot of people here that say, oh my God, I really want to bring my career to a different level, or I want to know how Caroline actually stepped into the property business without having initial experience or a mentor or anything else, and people want to get in touch with you. How can they get in touch? Where can they find you? Where can they best connect with you?
Yeah, the best way is dreamcareerclub.com, because once you're there, you're in my site. And so on that Dream Career Club page, number of different resources, links to free samples of the resources, links to my different blogs, including 10 exercises to do experimentation. So, there's just a lot there where you can get a sense for my philosophy and my approach and my voice, and also get helpful tips you can use right away.
Perfect. Love it. Great. Thank you so much, Caroline, for being with us. And thank you all for being with us. Is there something that you want to say to round it off? A final inspirational message, Caroline?
I would say that the best time is always now, right? I think people look at the economy, or they look at the job market, or they look at some external marker and they say, is now a good time? And in my experience, and this is both in terms of hiring people as a recruiter, but also coaching people. So at this point, I've seen thousands of career paths. Internal readiness trumps market conditions anytime. So if you feel like you want to make a change, then yeah, I would go for it.
Best time is now. I love it. It's the number one message that we need to keep in mind to beat procrastination, right? So perfect. Love it. Thank you for being on with us today, Caroline. Thank you all for being on with us today. Okay, as we say, always, take action on the suggestion from Caroline. Okay, think about like, what is one area in your life you want to change? What are 5 things you can do differently around it? And share with us in our Heart Power Global Nation, what have you picked up from this interview? What action are you going to take? And what is coming out of it for you? And also, is there anything we can support you with? So thank you for being on today. And again, as always, we always run it off with our major message. Keep doing your own magic and speak up, scale up, impact the world in your own powerful, magical way. So all the best for now, and we'll be back with another inspiring interview very soon. All the best for now. Cheers.